Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us right here on The Right View. Tonight, we're so excited to be joined by Grammy-nominated artist, Five for Fighting's John Ondrasik. John, we're stoked to have you. Thank you for joining us. I think so many people know you. They know your songs. Did you always want to take this career path and be a musician? Tell us about how you started.
Yeah, I was lucky to know very early on what my passion was in life. My mom was a piano teacher. She was a USC piano major. And my dad was an astrophysicist at NASA in the 70s.
Yeah.
So I had this very interesting childhood between science and music. And she started me very young. I started about 2 or 3. I know you have young kids.
Yeah.
You want to kind of start them young on the piano. She started me very young, and I had the aptitude. And when California cut funding for the arts, she volunteered at our elementary school, and I was Tony in West Side Story and doing the musical theater thing. But she was very wise. When I was 13, 14, wanted to ride my skateboard, play basketball, she let me quit taking piano lessons. But by then I had the fundamentals, and it was now fun. And I started writing songs, and I borrowed my sister's guitar 30 years ago. I still haven't returned to her, and started writing songs. And yeah, I knew very young it was my passion, and I've been incredibly blessed to kind of live my life fulfilling my childhood passion.
Yeah, I mean, who gets to do that, honestly? And to know, by the way, at such a young age, that's what you wanted to do. I find it so fascinating that you had a dad who was obviously an astrophysicist. I mean, that's incredible, but that's very clearly 2 different parts of the brain. You have the arts portion and obviously the, science, mathematics portion. But you actually graduated from UCLA with a degree in applied science and mathematics. So you're using all of it, John. You're using the full brain. And a lot of people, I mean, that's awesome.
Well, it really was the plan B, right? We know in the arts, there are no guarantees. It's not like sports that if you're Tom Brady or you're Michael Jordan, you're going to play.
Yeah.
And I think for me, my parents were so helpful in my career to this day, so supportive. And we kind of agreed that let me go get a degree where I can get a real job if this whole thing falls apart. And I had some aptitude in math. And I frankly moved my whole studio into my dorm room, so I was writing songs all day and doing proofs at night. And so it was, it actually gave me more freedom when I did pursue, out of college, where I didn't have to take certain musical jobs I didn't want to do. I didn't want to be playing top 40, 6 nights a week to make a living. So it gave me some freedom to really pursue what I wanted to do. But yeah, those math genes are gone long ago. Those brain cells have evaporated. Don't ask me any questions. But yeah,
we're gonna work out a problem. I had a problem I was gonna have you work out for us, but maybe next time.
Yes, thank you.
Here's what I find very interesting, though. Here's how I know that you're the real deal when it comes to being a musician, because you've been writing your own songs, as you're saying, when you were in college, like when you were a kid. That's the mark of a legit musician. Now, I took piano growing up, and I am so grateful I did, because nothing, as you know, being a pianist yourself, is more fulfilling, I think, than sitting down at a piano, just being able to play a bunch of music, being able to sing as you play. I mean, I love doing it. But John, I've never written a song in my life, nor do I even feel inclined to do so. I'm happy to perform other people's songs. That's how I know you're the real deal, though.
Well, look, I'm a child of the 70s, right? So my musical formation came from the 70s with the great songwriters who wrote and sang their own songs. Joni Mitchell, James Taylor, Elton John, Billy Joel, go down the list, The Who, Pete Townsend. So I was kind of developed on the age of these songwriters who sat down, they wrote their song, it had a point of view, they played it and performed it. So I think it's, it makes sense why I'm this kind of relic who writes and sings and does it themselves. Again, and also I got to be honest, I was influenced by some of the great singers, of course. I found Steve Perry's voice teacher because I love Journey, Freddie Mercury. So the kind of operatic high voice singers I loved. So it was not just the songwriting. I loved these singers too, And I was very fortunate to find some folks who worked with some of these icons and develop the voice as well, because that's a big part of success, is having an identifiable voice that people know when they hear it on the radio.
And they do. I mean, I know you can tell you're singing whenever you are. I mean, that's a very cool thing. I never even considered that, but obviously. Let me ask you this. When you write a song, do you first write the lyrics and then go back and say, I'm going to plug music in here? How does it work for you?
That's a good question. I think there's many permutations. Sometimes you start with melody. I'll be playing on the piano, I'll find a melody, maybe some words will find their way into it, and then you develop the song that way. 100 Years kind of developed that way, as well as sometimes you write a page of lyrics and you try to place music to it. It's much harder. That's what Elton used to do with Bernie Taupin. Bernie would literally write a lyric, leave it on the piano. Elton would wake up and write Your Song or Rocket Man. It's much harder because you're kind of stuck with these syllables and these words. But that's some things I do. And a lot of times songs come from a concept, an inspiration. The songs we'll talk about today, you know, Blood on My Hands and Can Women Save the World, you know, those came from some observation, some emotional place. So I tell everybody there's a great song in every room if I could just hear it. Some of my songs come from just listening, and somebody will say a phrase. I'm like, oh, there's a song there. So I think it's a lot of it's work ethic, writing hundreds of songs, being on the lookout, and trusting your gut.
Yeah, I mean, it's so cool. I have such admiration for people that have the ability that you do, because music is so powerful, as you know, and just has such an influence, I think, on so many people. Even my kids, who are now, my daughter's 3 and my son is about to turn 5. I mean, we get in the car and they have songs. It's so funny to hear the songs that they're interested in, but they have songs that they love and they'll request them, and songs can make you feel a certain way and take you back in time. It's such a gift and such an incredible thing, I think, to be able to do what you do. Truly, I admire it so much. And you said you had the math as obviously a backup plan. The music thing kind of worked out for you. Obviously, you performed as Five for Fighting. You've had so many hit songs. You referenced 100 Years, Superman, I think a lot of people know you for. But what I find really interesting is a lot of this success for you came prior to social media really being an influential part of our lives. These days, I feel like, John, so many musicians, so much music gets discovered because of an online presence. Do you think if social media had been a big deal when you were a little younger and kind of in your early days of your career, would it have made it easier for you or harder for you? Because I could see it kind of being a double-edged sword.
I think you're right. I think there's positives and negatives. Certainly the nice thing about the internet, it's leveled the playing field. You don't have to have a record company spending $1 million to get you on the radio for anybody to hear your song. You can, Justin Bieber is a great example. There's so many folks that people know because they put a video up on YouTube and it blew up and they have careers and they're not beholden to record companies or radio. Same time, it's harder to make a living at music because so much of the money has come out of the music business. You know, when Superman came out, it was 2001 was kind of the last wave of the music industry where they could monetize records. And when streaming came out, all the money came out because instead of selling a record for $5, it's 50 cents for a song. Right. And tour support came out. And people don't realize that some of our greatest artists didn't break on their first record. Bruce Springsteen took 4 records to break. And so you don't have really artist development giving artists time to learn, to fail, to tour, to play 1,000 shows before anybody knows you. You see all these kids, their first show ever is on the Tonight Show and they're deer in the headlights. And so I think there's both positives and negatives. But the idea of being able to make a record on your laptop for a couple $1,000 instead of spending $200,000, the ability to make a video for $5,000 instead of $400,000 that we spent on Superman, it does give everybody a chance to be in the game. So I think it's great, though I would like to see artists able to monetize their songs and their music better because, you know, we can't have music just be a hobby. We need people to to be able to make a living in it like I did and like I do. Because as you said, music is critical to our culture. And it also permeates borders. And I saw firsthand with the Concert for New York when I played Superman. It's not about fame. It's not about fortune. It's not about chart position. Music can make a difference in people's lives in a way no other medium can. And we need artists of the day, just like we did in the 70s, you know, having those artists mark those periods of time. We need that now. And I worry about that a little bit.
Well, I mean, what can be done? What do you think we could do to help, you know, artists sort of monetize things better? Is there anything on top of your mind that you think could help?
Well, I actually testified years ago to the Senate when Napster first came out about increasing some of the rates because these platforms, Spotify, MySpace back in the day, they build their multi-billion-dollar enterprises on us, on songwriters who kind of get pennies on the dollar. So I think, you know, Congress can help make the rates a little higher for artists. Of course, COVID really crushed everybody, not being able to perform. But I do think it's coming back a little bit. Streaming's caught up a little bit with where it was 20 years ago, so it's getting better. But I do love the fact that you could write a song tomorrow and put it on the internet, and all of a sudden people are singing your song. That never happened, certainly with me, and I think technology is amazing, and I love that open door.
Yeah. How long did it take you, by the way, before you kind of got discovered or felt like you had really made it?
Good question. I was one of those 15-year overnight success stories. You know, I had success very late. I was passed on. You'll hear the story a million times, but I was passed on by every record company, every publishing company. I was playing in a piano bar on Melrose and Vine, and this woman walked in a black leather jacket, and she said, "Okay, you're okay. I get people record deals. I'll start to work with you." And 10 years later, I had my song on the radio. Now, luckily, she was the best thing that ever happened to me because I married her, and it'll be our 25th anniversary in a couple of weeks. But
wow.
Yeah, Superman, I was in my late 20s, 100 years, early 30s. So having success very late, again, it was a miracle, but it also gave me perspective in that I understood how fortunate I was, that it wasn't about me. And I was so grateful to have this voice. So it was quite the road. And Steve Jobs has a great quote of half the difference between a successful entrepreneur and an unsuccessful entrepreneur is pure perseverance. And that was me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's interesting that you did kind of continue on sort of a quest to make it in the music industry because you did have sort of your a college degree, a great degree to fall back on. Were you just so drawn to it? Did you know that if you just kept going, something was going to happen? Did you always have that feeling?
I wish I could say yes, but the answer is no. I was working at the family business so I could pay my rent, but my future wife at the time was quietly sending out demos of old songs to record companies that I wasn't aware of because I said, look, if we're going to get married, I got to get a job. I got to start making some money. And one of those record companies found a song called Easy Tonight, and they put it out, and it became a minor hit. And we had one swing, and they said, what song do you want to go with or go down with? And I said, well, I see people react to Superman. And they're like, well, no, it's a ballad. The piano's not on the radio. It's Lilith Fair, boy bands. I'm like, well, if I'm going to go down, I'm going to go down with Superman. And, you know, here we're talking because.
What a good decision. Wow.
Well, lucky. There's a lot of luck involved as well and fate. But yeah. So it was that close. It was that close, you know, to having to get a real job.
Well, I mean, look, you never want to hear about people giving up on their dreams. And I think that you're a testament to that. You know, you did it in a responsible way. You had sort of things you were doing as well. And you weren't just, you know, like living on the street and saying, I'm going to make it one day. Right. But it's great to know that there is success, because I think that a lot of people who, whatever it is that they want to do, they kind of struggle with it and they say, well, how long should I pursue this? And you know what? I think you work hard, you do what you got to do, and you're going to be a success. I think maybe, you know, you might not be world famous success, but you'll be successful in whatever it is you do. And I kind of love the moral of the story, if you will. I think it's, you know, what we all should be talking about and what we should be teaching our next generation, quite frankly.
I agree with you. Talent is maybe 10% of my success. So much of success is work ethic,
Yeah.
developing relationships, things that have nothing to do with music. And when I do these keynotes, and when I do that, I talk about all these things that have nothing to do with talent. There's much more talented songwriters than me that you'll never hear, because a lot of it has to do with perseverance, with humility, with your integrity. How do you conduct yourself? I tell new artists of like, you need to be the same person when you have the #1 song in the country as when the radio station won't open the door to you. And that can be hard. And so success also can bring its own challenges. And as I said, I think for me that since I was older, and I wasn't 18 years old and thought the whole world revolved around me, I had an easier time with the success part of it. But, still to this day, my mom's still waiting for the whole house of cards to collapse, Lara, and go get a real job, but luckily it's still, I still have the same attitude and try to kind of keep that mentality in the back of my head.
Good for you. I mean, it's so important too. And believe me, I've seen, and I think you probably have too, your share of people in many industries who do not stay humble and have that humility. And gosh, I think it's so important. You should never forget where you came from, who you are, and that, look, we're all the same at the end of the day. Some people just maybe made the right connections. I grew up in North Carolina. I grew up in a very normal American family. The fact that my last name is Trump, I can assure you, was never part of the plan. And you would have never convinced me of this, 20 years ago. But here I am, and I'm so grateful, and I'm so blessed for all the experiences I've had and the things that I get to do, and be able to talk to people like you, John. I think it's so cool. But man, it's such a good thing to keep in the back of your mind. Whoever you are out there, you got to stay humble in whatever you do, because that's really the only way, as far as I'm concerned.
No, I agree. And if you're fortunate enough to have a platform like you do and I do, it allows you to do things to hopefully help the world and support various causes. That's the blessing of my success, is to be able to do things, to recognize, really shine the spotlight where it belongs. The spotlight finds you, of course, and finds me through my songs. But through that, we can kind of, put a mirror up and focus it on who really deserves the spotlight, and hopefully make a difference in the world that way.
Well, and you've done that. I mean, gosh, whether it's in Ukraine, or whether it's, kind of talking about the exit from Afghanistan, or you referenced New York. Why was it that you felt like that you wanted to kind of highlight all of these things? Because I really do think that it serves the purpose, I think, that I assume you had, which is to bring attention and get people involved and remind us that that world is not just about us. We should be paying attention to these bigger issues. But tell me a little bit about that, because I think it's such a great thing that you've done, it seems like, throughout your career.
Yeah, through the most of my career to the last year, I really tried to keep my worldview kind of out of my songs. You can certainly kind of know me through my songs. You could tell when I had children, because the Two Lights record were all about my kids. Certainly with 100 Years and Superman, I have a certain kind of, I don't know what I'd say, like melancholy vision of Post-it notes about what could maybe make our lives a little better. I have a song called What Kind of World Do You Want? Saying, look, if you think things need to be changed, you need to take action, not complain about it. But frankly, I always had a little disdain for these celebrities who would get on their soapbox and lecture us on, this is what you need to do, and this is what's bad, and this is what's good. So I really tried to stay away from that. This last year, with the 2 songs about Afghanistan and Ukraine, those were more screams. Those were more just things I felt I had to say. I go back to the 60s with the protest songs. I think, Marvin Gaye or Bob Dylan, Creedence, they didn't sit down and say, okay, I'm going to write a protest song today. They were very angry, passionate about certain issues, and they had no choice. And when I wrote Blood on My Hands after the withdrawal from Afghanistan, it was just like that. I was so angry. It was inspired by a friend of mine who does amazing work around the world, humanitarian work. And she called me and said, I need a phone number. And I said, why? She said, well, I have to go rescue Americans and allies we abandoned in Afghanistan. I'm like, you're going to risk your life to go there to save these people that we abandoned. So it was personal for me.
Yeah.
And so that I had to write it. And I didn't expect anything to happen when I put it out, but it happened to become like the song for our Afghan veterans that spoke their pain. And similar with the Ukraine song. It was something I think so historical, so critical for our times. I felt I had to write it and sing it and put it out. And that also came in 2 or 3 days. So these are more just bursts of things I think a lot of us are thinking about, whether they agree with my point of view or not. I think these songs are different. I'm also at a different stage of my career where I'm not trying to write songs to get on the radio. I really don't care if people like me or not. And I think it's kind of a comfortable place to be able to kind of speak to some of these issues that other folks may not want to.
Well, with Blood on My Hands, am I correct in, I heard that it was removed from YouTube for a while. Is that accurate?
Yeah, of course. I mean, whenever you do songs like that, you'll get caught up in the big tech and the culture war and censorship. And I was not surprised. It was interesting with YouTube that they initially put it up because I don't know if you've seen the video, but it's very graphic because I felt if I didn't show what was happening, it would not recognize the true plight of the Afghans. Mm-hmm. If I don't show a woman being whipped, frankly, I'm not helping her cause. So it was a hard video to watch, but I put up a graphic warning, children's warning. YouTube put up their own warning. They put it up, but only when it went viral and senators started tweeting it did they take it down and have to apologize and put it. So look, this story a million times. We don't need to waste time on it. We see it happen to certain side of the spectrum a lot, but it was an education, but they did end up putting it back up. And again, I think it's just one little blip of history of one artist's opinion of something that happened. And when you go back in history and listen to music, it's a historical record in ways that documentaries or speeches are not. You can listen to the music of the 60s and get a sense of the times. I don't think we have that now, or we need more of that. And I think there should have been 1,000 songs about Afghanistan. And frankly, I think if it was a different party in office, there would have been. And that's not a healthy democracy. I would have written the same song, whether your father-in-law was president, George Bush, Barack Obama, if they had taken the same actions. Only the names would have changed. And I think that's the kind of disappointing thing in the culture, that people tend to express themselves tribally, not morally. To me, Afghanistan's a moral issue. It's not a political one. Same with Ukraine. It's a moral issue. It's not a political one. And that's kind of where I speak from. And some people like it and some people don't.
Yeah, well, we know all about that. Believe me.
I know you do. I know you do.
But I think it's honestly, I think that it speaks so highly of your character and who you are, and the fact that you felt like this was something you like you're saying you had to do, that you really needed to write these songs and put them out there. And obviously, John, a lot of people connected with them because they were very popular, and they still remain rather popular at this time. And so I think that it's so hard these days to be able to do what you did, to say, you know what, I really don't care what people say about me. I really don't care if I end up on the radio or whatever it is, or what kind of the reaction might be. And we need more of that, because I just find it so fascinating. We live in a time where we are all so connected. We're supposed to be so connected. We have social media, you have the internet. You could literally look up in seconds anything you want about any topic, any person. And yet it feels like as a society, we just tend to ignore major things like this because, well, it's happening overseas. Oh, it's in Afghanistan or whatever. And the truth is, I just wonder where we're all headed. I think often about how the good old days, when I grew up in the 80s, where we didn't have computers and cell phones and all these things. I just feel like that is part of just the downfall of our society, quite frankly.
No, I agree with you. I mean, I think one of the large negatives of social media is it's made the society so corrosive.
Yeah.
And there's no conversations. We're insulting each other. We're calling each other names. We're gotcha.
Because it's through a phone, and you don't actually talk to people face to face. You never, people are able to just hide behind it, right? So they never actually have to face up to somebody and have a real conversation with them. It's just, I'll write my little piece and insult you, and then, I mean, you'll never really know who I am because I'm behind a computer or behind a phone.
Or even if you're a famous, media writer or pundit, that's how they build. It's frankly, they're incentivized to build their brand. The more clicks they get, the more controversial they are. So the media and social media incentivizes this kind of bipolar America, where if you try to have nuance and you try to discuss something with goodwill, nobody wants to hear it because they're just trying to play gotcha. Remember, you're a little young, but remember the show Crossfire, where you had someone from the right and someone from the left every night and discuss the issues. And at the end, they would shake hands. And I always found those shows so interesting because I learned something from both sides. Nobody's interested in learning anything. They're about winning and destroying the other side. And it is incredibly dangerous for our democracy. And I think it's one of, and the media has certainly taken a big part of that because they're financially incentivized to do so. So it is, I think, I agree with you. I don't know where we go from here. I'm very worried about our country. We're not interested in solutions. We're interested in burning down the other side. And that's not going to get us anywhere. And frankly, I think the world sees that. And when you have things like Afghanistan, where we abandon our allies and break our promise, we talked about that a year ago, that the next domino will be Ukraine. And now you have Ukraine. The next domino will be Taiwan. So these are historic times where Americans need to come together like we did after 9/11.
Yeah.
After 9/11, we put all the tribes, the letters, all that aside. We came together. We said, this is bigger than us. I think we're at a time like that right now, but it's really hard to do so. And we're seeing the fallout. I think our adversaries understand that we're so locked in these petty arguments of these trivial things that get the clicks. In the meantime, they're moving. And that's one reason I went to Ukraine. I wanted to see it for myself. I wish every American could sit where I sat on that battlefield.
How was that? Yeah.
It was surreal. I mean, ironically, the whole trip started with my friend Save Our Allies, a group I've been working with in Afghanistan to evacuate people we left behind. They were in Ukraine, and I'd written Can One Man Save the World, partly to recognize Zelensky. I mean, look, we offered him a plane ticket. He said, send me some stingers. Like, who is this guy, right?
Yeah.
A little different than what we've seen the last 25 years. But it was also to put the world on notice that who are we? Are we Normandy? Are we the America that brought down the Berlin Wall? Or are we the America that abandoned our allies, the Taliban, and said, wow, that was an extraordinary success? I don't know. So when I wrote the song, it was really a plea to the world. What are you going to do? We've seen this before. We've seen this appeasement methodology before in World War II. We know it doesn't work. So to me, that's really what the song was about. But when I got there and I sat there in front of the Maria, the plane, their cargo plane, the symbol of Ukrainian freedom that Putin blew up to gut their will, with this orchestra, these incredible musicians, and each one of them either lost somebody, had someone on the front, or somebody missing. I had blown up tanks next to me. I had standing in jet fuel, singing this song about freedom. It really hit home for me, and I think the Americans that were with me. And I think if every American could see that, I think they'd understand why I'm so passionate about it and other folks are passionate. Because it's not just about Ukraine, it's about us. And certainly, if Putin devours Ukraine, why would he stop there? I don't want to see our soldiers fighting in Eastern Europe in 2 years and our kids dying. So we have these huge things. China's flying armed flights over Taiwan every day, and here we are screaming about pronouns. And I think it's dangerous for the country, and I think we need to mature and wake up. Will we? I don't know. Maybe my song can make a little difference. I hope so, but that's all I can do is write it and speak it, and hopefully it can provide a culture front on this war. We're calling for a Live Aid type concert for Ukraine. I think it needs to happen. Our generation needs to stand up. let the Russian people know that they're pariahs. We've talked from the beginning of this interview, music can permeate borders in ways other things can't. We need to do that for Ukraine and, frankly, the world at large.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about what ultimately happens and what can bring us all together, especially I think as Americans. I often think back to 9/11, and I had just started college when it happened, and I remember the feeling very vividly, as though it was yesterday, of how connected we were as a country. And it didn't matter who you were, it didn't matter your beliefs, whether you voted a certain way, none of it mattered. What mattered was that we were Americans, we were in it together. And John, I'm afraid that it might take another terrible situation like that to wake people up, because people are so dug in right now, and it just feels almost like, I don't know that we've ever been this deep in the hole, and gosh, I worry about what it would take to bring us out of it, but I'm afraid it could be something really drastic like that. I hope I'm wrong, and I hope that somehow things change on their own, but at this point, unfortunately, I don't have a whole lot of faith that's going to happen without a major wake-up call for a lot of people. But I love that you took what you had and you put it forward with the music, and you were there, and what an incredible experience, and something I'm sure you'll remember forever, and has truly impacted you. I can tell that. I want to ask you though about your work with veterans, because over your career you really have done a lot for veterans, USO tours, worked with the Gary Sinise Foundation. A lot of people in your position would say, I'll donate some money, but you've really gotten out there and you've done some stuff. Where did your love for soldiers, veterans come from?
I always respected the troops. I didn't have any military in my family, so it's not like that's kind of what kind of bled into me. But when Superman in 100 Years came out during the first Iraq War, I started getting emails from our troops in theater, in combat. And it really impressed on me how music can make a difference to our troops' wellness. And it was so fascinating to see how they would use the same song for completely different reasons. One person, well, I'm pumping myself up for a mission, or I'm trying to escape, or I'm thinking of home, or I'm trying to calm down or pump myself up. And I realized how music really matters to our troops. And so that kind of led to some USO tours, to writing songs specifically speaking about our troops and military families' experience, and to working with Gary, my pal Gary Sinise, being an ambassador for his foundation. We're doing a concert in September, at the end of September. He's opening his foundation up in Nashville, so we're excited to do that. And so yeah, it's really been the honor of my career to sing for our troops, and at every show there's so many veterans, and especially with the Afghanistan song, I think we saw after the withdrawal, so many Afghan vets felt betrayed that we literally abandoned their fellow brothers in arms that sometimes saved their lives. Mm-hmm. We saw the suicide rates go up, the PTSD, and they would come to my shows, and there'd be these big, tough special forces, badass dudes with just pain and tears in their eyes, and they'd come up to me after hearing Blood on My Hands. And I could see it provided a release for them, because they felt, okay, I'm not alone. People understand my pain. So I think my whole experience, early in my career has almost prepared me for this moment to be a voice for folks who are voiceless, especially when it's our troops, and especially when there's been no accountability for any of it. Right. So we're coming up on the 1-year anniversary in a week as we speak, and I'm still getting Save Me emails, and we will have a 1-year anniversary of our Blood in My Hands video, because our troops are still suffering. And I think until we find some accountability for them, they will not be able to have closure. So Afghanistan, Ukraine, they're still all open items that we're working on. But thank God for our troops. We don't have this conversation. Everything good we have in this country is because of our troops and our military families. I love them all, and certainly I think whatever side of the aisle you're on, we should be grateful for what they provided for us.
Amen. We would not be here right now. Gosh, we wouldn't have this incredible country. None of it without the brave men and women who protect us, who risk their lives, who are away from their families. I mean, obviously so grateful. And I always encourage anybody, whenever you have a chance, I do. But look, a police officer, a military personnel, whoever it is, say thank you, because man, they do a tough job, and I'm personally so grateful for them. And I love all of the things that you do, John. I think it's awesome. All right, final question. Would you ever run for political office? Why or why not?
Are you crazy? I saw what you guys go through.
Oh, this has been a breeze. What a dream. It's been so easy. What do you mean? I know.
I do worry that I have some friends, who are in political office and work a lot, like Mike Waltz, the great congressman, first Green Beret in Congress, and a lot of friends that work in DC. I guess never say never, but I really feel that I can accomplish more by doing what I'm doing in the culture side of it and writing these songs. Also, I live in California, and my worldview doesn't work very well here, so I'm not sure anybody would vote for me.
Maybe you can change some minds out there, John. Let's see.
Yeah, well, but I do think, you mentioned before, we're both very concerned about the polarization of the country and what do we do? People say, well, what do I do? Let me give you a little bit of hope. When I play my shows, I just got off a 2-month tour. Every night I play for a couple thousand people or 1,000 people. And I look out there. And sometimes I'm in Ohio. And sometimes I'm in Florida. And sometimes in California. And sometimes I'm in Seattle. And sometimes my audiences are 80-20 Republican. Sometimes they're 80-20 Democrat. And I talk about Can One Man Save the World? And where it comes from. And I play the song. And people stand up. I sing 100 Years and everybody sings. I sing Superman, everybody sings. I even play Blood on My Hands, and I talk about where it came from. And not that everybody agrees initially, but they think about it. And I can see their brain going, and they don't leave and they don't throw shoes at me. So I do think if you get away from the media and you kind of tour the country like I do, you understand we have a lot more in common than people give us credit for, and that we do listen to each other. You just don't see it on TV. So I do think there is hope for us. But I think it's important that people like us have these conversations. We can't just wait for our leaders to solve it for us. I think each one of us has a role. Me as a songwriter, coming to talk to you, and then going on other shows that have different views. Your demeanor, being so open and listening. You have a big platform too. So I think you have a big role in this as well. And I think the more of us that have these conversations that understand that we may not disagree, but most of the stuff we want the same thing.
Yeah.
And continue this kind of this dialogue of collegiality. I think things can get better. So it's a big lift. But again, when I wrote What Kind of World Do You Want, it's about don't complain, take action. Because if you don't, it's on you. So I really appreciate you doing this, your demeanor and your nuance about these things. I think it's critical for all of us.
Well, I love the positivity at the end, and there's hope in our future. You heard it here, ladies and gentlemen, from John Ondrasik. Thank you so much for bringing us up at the end. And I really appreciate the time. What an interesting conversation. I'm sure there's so much more to come from you. Obviously, we do have a couple of open-ended items with Afghanistan, with Ukraine, and we'll all be watching and doing whatever I think it is we can to make these things better. But thank you for all that you've done, and I know that you will continue to do. So we'll certainly be following it, and we appreciate you spending some time with us here.
Well, thanks so much. And if I could just let your audience know the name of the video that we did in Ukraine, the song's called Can One Man Save the World, featuring the Ukrainian orchestra, an amazing Ukrainian orchestra. Just Google the video. All the proceeds of the song and the video go to Save Our Allies, who are based in North Carolina, to help their work in Afghanistan and Ukraine. So all the money is going to these amazing American heroes who are keeping the promise, really the best of ourselves. So I appreciate people watching the video, sharing the video. Yeah. And as mentioned, there will be an Afghanistan 1-year anniversary coming too. So I appreciate you allowing me to let your folks know about that.
Absolutely. Well, John, thanks for joining us today. And to everybody at home, as always, thank you for joining us on The Right View. We'll see you back here next time.